Jenny Sue here. All right, I just want to kind of go over the what is black activity and just kind of remind you of some things that'll help make it easier when you do this activity with your students. So again, you're going to need filter paper. You can find this if you Google it on Amazon. I just literally search for scientific grade filter paper. And then you're going to need the Vis-a-Vis black and green markers. Remember, those are the water soluble ones, meaning that water will break them down into their components. You're then going to take and you're going to put the 3 dots on your filter paper. And I usually do this in groups of 2. And you'll need your pipette, your eyedropper, and you'll need water. So again, you're just going to have the students put the water on the filter paper, have them hold it up off of the table, because again, as the water gets absorbed, it'll possibly bleed through and you don't want it getting on their clothes. But they just hold it up and then you just have them make observations. And I always say to the students, look carefully. That's what observation means, to watch or to look carefully. And so they're going to make those observations, and they should start to see that as the water kind of spreads out on the paper, they'll see the colors start to come out. And then you can talk about, well, our investigation question was, what happens when we add water to the black dots? And the answer that we found is that we saw colors. Again, this is what I would call descriptive research. I don't know what happens when I add water to this filter paper on top of these black dots. So I'm just simply making observations to see what happens. I'm going to describe what takes place with the water as it adds, as it interacts with the black dot. So again, once I know what happens now when I add water with these black dots, now I can move into that experimental research where I start to change the conditions of the pieces. So you can change the paper. What if I went and used a coffee filter? You could change the size of the filter paper. So maybe I use a smaller one. Does that make a difference? Or I could look at changing the black dots. Do I change the color of the ink? Do I change the brand of the pen? These are all things, these are what a scientist would call the independent variables. I'm manipulating them, and I am going to see what happens when I change those pieces. So again, when I'm just doing my research to see what happens when I add water to the black dots, that's just descriptive research. I'm just describing what I see, and I'm learning about this phenomena. Now, when I start to change things, now I'm doing an experimental research. I can actually come up with a testable question. What happens, or what is the effect when I change the color of the dots on the colors that I see? So in other words, if I change the color to green, will I see different colors? And so there's my testable question. I'm going to find out that answer. What happens when I change the color? Again, because we're adults, we know something about primary and secondary colors. So we already can make a prediction as to what we think will happen. But for a young child who's never played around with mixing colors, they don't know. So I don't ask them to make a prediction until we start to learn something. As I want my students to get into the habit of making good predictions, not just randomly guessing, but to go, I know that green is a secondary color because I've mixed yellow and blue before and gotten green. So I think those green dots are going to show me the colors yellow and blue. So it's a different way than you may have been taught all your life in your science classes. It's just a subtle shift. And this helps students to really be able to kind of understand, and they're making better predictions, which will ultimately lead to better hypothesis as they get older. So again, that is the activity, What is Black? Now, some textbooks, children's literature books that you might want to consider getting. Of course, there's the book Little Blue and Little Yellow. It's a great story about colors coming together, and it's a perfect one to do after you've done your experimentation with the green dots. Another book is this one right here. You might want to get this one. It's a fun book that goes through and actually talks about mixing colors. Or maybe if you want to get into using colors as reflective of our emotions, this book by Dr. Seuss, My Many Colored Days. This is a great book that goes through why sometimes red is used for anger and blue is used to represent sadness. It's just a great children's story. And again, once I've done these activities and these experiments in science, using my time during language arts to read and to extend my understanding of the content just ties it all together so well for students. All right, well, I hope you have fun playing around with adding water to dots.